Okay, I think we can start. I sent a reminder on that channel, but I think we can start. Sam, do you want to share the points to start with this discussion, please?
Yeah, sure. I can do that. Maybe what I can do is just share my screen and just bring up that Slack message. Okay. So this is kind of what I put in there, and there's a couple of points, but basically, the reason I wrote this in here was I'm just trying to get this kind of demo ready for PoseMesh, and we're kind of making some pretty good progress. We've got some cool stuff happening. Gustavo was monumental yesterday evening in helping me fix the geolocation stuff that I was having problems with. So we're kind of making some good progress. And I just got to the point where I wanted to try and proxy the application to make it available from the internet, and realized that in our current setup, we don't really have any method of being able to do that. When we specify the ports that we map from the container, in the job description, it says public, and it says, in fact, let's just have a quick look here. It
I think
says
public, yes.
we've got private and public, right?
Yes.
And so, but when you specify public, what that does is it just puts it onto the subnet. It maps it to the tunnel adapter and not to the external adapter of the machine. And so
wait. What public is supposed to mean is that you get a public a mapping from the public IP to the TAN of the allocation. It's supposed to be happening with IP tables, and last time I checked, it was supposed to work.
Well, I mean, I can quickly show you. This is a config that I was using. Ignore that. But if we look at this is a config that I was using that had.
We are not seeing the config file.
Oh,
so.
Sorry. Let me.
No problem.
Please share the right stuff.
We are seeing the Slack app.
Yeah. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a specification for a PoseMesh node where we have their node software running in one container. And
sorry, Sam, could you increase a little bit? No, so don't worry. It's.
Sorry, I can't. I don't know how to.
No,
I think you just did. I think you just did.
Sorry.
I think it just did increase it and then decrease it, but that's okay. I can see it, and I'm on a phone.
You're
Maybe
supposed to be on vacation. What
yeah,
are
but
you doing
this is
here?
tech discussion. I want to.
Okay.
Okay, so we can see here that we're specifying this node that's running their server, and then basically I want to be able to try and proxy that. So
you just allocate the port, you know, like.
Yeah, but then I want to be able to do HTTPS. I need to create a Let's Encrypt certificate and all that kind of stuff. So I need a proxy to be able to do that. And then I need to forward the port of the proxy to the outside world to allow it to get access. Okay.
Wait. So, you know, the port mapping right now, it's working, right? You know, that's what I want to know.
So let me come out of here, and if we look here, this is the what happened when I deployed it. So we got 8080 to 80, and you guys are in the way there, and then 8443 to 443. Okay, but if you look at this, this is the tunnel adapter address that's created by the subnet. It's not the external IP address. So it appears that by design, currently we're exposing that current config is exposing ports to the subnet, and that in itself
No,
is,
that's completely wrong. It shouldn't be. The subnet is
well,
all open,
well,
you know, like internally.
well, I disagree actually, because what I was going to say is actually there are some things that you may not want to be entirely available on the subnet. So in the example of you have a front end, back end application with a database, you may well, you might have multiple machines in the pod, or a group of allocations on a single node, but only certain ports need to have access.
Okay, but that's an entirely different discussion. Now we're talking about the public port mapping. So, you know, what should happen
I think
is that
it's kind of if we just take the current spec here, which works really nicely, you can specify multiple ports, it works. And if we just expand that and just do something like this, propose where you're able to map to specify that you want to map to a subnet as well, then I'm guessing it's a fairly simple tweak from where we are now to be able to.
I'm confused. Is the current functionality that we have right now not working? Right, the public port, public to private port mapping, does it not work?
It does, well, it does this. Public maps.
Can I
Public
interject here?
maps the sub. Yeah.
So the mapping works when the mapping is to the new tunnel interface, to the subnet IP. So what Sam was looking for is to do it, for example, let's say to any address on the machine, to any of the interfaces, so that, let's say, if you have a public IP on your NIC, then it's also forwarded to that as well, not just to the tunnel interface. That's what you're looking for, right, Sam?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but by design, what should be happening is that the public IP, you know, like basically we port map on the public IP and we send it, you know, to the tunnel adapter. That's what's supposed to be doing. So it should be reachable from the public. Is that not the case right now?
Well,
Yeah, it's
it
not.
doesn't.
It's only mapping to the tunnel interface created by the DMS. So only the port would be only accessible on the subnet.
Oh, that's a mistake. It should be accessible on the public. That's the whole point.
Well,
I
okay.
would not say that is a mistake, but I think there should be parameter who does that, because sometimes you would not want that.
exactly. And that's kind of why I'm suggesting just adding an additional parameter to be able to specify public, private, and subnet.
So what does subnet mean?
So subnet means it binds to the tunnel adapter, and then that port's available to any other node that's on the subnet. Private
Yeah,
means
okay, but what we
and
have.
public means it's
Yeah,
mapped
sorry,
to
go on.
Yeah, and then public means it's available externally.
Yes. So first of all, we have to make sure that the public-private mapping actually works, because public means to be available externally. If it doesn't, it's a gross bug that we've got to fix us up.
Yeah. So
That works. That works fine. So
Okay,
the
it
suggestion
works.
is to add another
well,
another
no, it
forwarding.
doesn't. It
Actually, not
doesn't
another
work.
forwarding.
It,
but
it
to
doesn't
specify
work
whether.
externally. Sorry.
Yeah, but
Like
to
what
forward.
Viso is
So
saying
if
is
we have.
Go on, Dagan.
Sorry to
Sorry.
interrupt, Sam.
Yeah, go.
But so if we have an indicator, let's say, to forward to only within the subnet only, or to forward to any address on the host machine, on the host that's running that location, That's the suggestion.
So yes, but, well, there's no any. We're talking about specific ports here.
No, I mean any for the IP address, not for the port, but for which interface to bind to, right? So for example, let's say 0.0.0.0, then the port, right? So that it would be accessible from anywhere. But if we do just for the subnets, then it would be that port would be, let's say, binded to that interface only.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but the thing is, right now the subnet is fully routable internally. So what's I think that Sun is suggesting is that we're going to restrict, like the routing internally, right? Is that what we're suggesting, Sam?
No, what I'm suggesting is that we also that we're able to specify that ports are mapped to the tunnel adapter so that some ports are only available internally on the machine. You may have a situation where there are some ports that you don't want to expose to the subnet.
Yes, but that's not like with an open filter. So the current situation is that internally in the subnet all ports are available.
No, it's not. I don't think so.
So,
Because
can I just try to structure this from what I understand? So it seems to me that it's not the case, but by default we are not open all the ports right now. What we open those ports to the subnet only.
No,
What we need to do, we expand this ability to map certain ports to the public network where anybody who hits the place.
What we're supposed to be doing is mapping the ports to the public. So public port to allocation port to the tunnel adapter.
Well, so that is a kind of a question. What do we do by default? And I'm not sure that by default we want to allow all the ports publicly accessible, even if this node has a public address.
No, they're not. We're not mapping all the ports. We're mapping a specific public port to a specific port in the allocation. That's how it's supposed to work.
Yep. So I believe this is what Sam is proposing, although I'm not sure that what I see from the proposed, configuration, whether it's node. I mean, on the node, you're mapping public ports to the subnet, or on the allocation level.
So it's on the allocation. So basically, how it's supposed to work, again, how it is supposed to work, is that the public port goes into a specific, like into a map port into the location. So we have like a public external access. Sam, you're looking at the routing rules, but did you actually try to access the port externally to the public IP? It should work.
Well, from my experience, when it's mapped like this, it's only available from that IP. It's exclusive.
Have you tried it?
Can we try it now?
There's nothing happening there. Like the IP tables command actually sets up like a network address translation. Like a forwarding rule. So basically, what happens is that the packets that come into the public port get injected into the TAN by the kernel, not by us.
Can you run this and just send me on the IP
just
address?
try
I will
to
try
access
to
it.
reach it.
Yeah, just tell it, like to the public IP and the port. It should work.
Sam, could you please link in the comment in the chat? I posted a snippet which will show the current functionality of the port mapping.
Sorry, it's in
In the
Zoom.
The chat, in the Zoom chat, yeah.
Yeah, it comes here.
I'll tell you what, but before we go any further, I just want to quickly just zoom out and just look at the other thing. So one is this concept of whether things are internally and externally available, and some basic scenarios, right? So we've got a basic scenario of someone just wants to run a website, right? And they want to map ports from external NIC to the container, right? That's it.
Yeah, and this should work already. This should work.
Yeah. And so by design, what is currently happening now is the port in the container is being mapped to the tunneling adapter, not to the external NIC. Okay.
It goes from the public, from the external NIC. It should go, you know, from the external NIC to the tunneling adapter container. The IP tables rule is there to basically snarf the packets that are going to the external port and put them into the TAN. That's what's supposed to be doing. Hamza, isn't that the case?
Absolutely, that's the case. We use IP
Yeah.
routes to do that.
Yeah. I mean, Sam, have you actually tried to read it from the public? You know, like this is supposed to work.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I should be able to.
In this case, what IP do we need to use? Because this
Well,
10 dot,
so
etc.
let's
is
have a look
not
here.
public,
So
right?
on
Yeah, basically,
my-
so you should be able to telnet from to the public IP to the port, and it should get you into, you know, like the internal, you know, like
Okay.
endpoint. You know, so if you have a web server there, just telnet and,
So-
you know, type get, you know, like HTTP one, you know, like get blah, you know, slash, and this should work.
Hang on 1 second. So this is actually on my local subnet. Let's just confirm. So this is the IP of this machine, 138. And we are trying to hit 8080.
Well, it could be that nothing is running there.
Are you running anything there? Is there anything listening with the port?
Well, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know because
Yeah, there just let's just put, you know, like a web server there, you know, like a
Okay,
hello
we,
web
we,
server.
we,
well,
we
well,
have
it
to
is-
make a test for this case.
Yes, we have to
So
make a
that-
test, but I believe this actually works.
Okay.
And we should
Yeah, it
definitely
works.
have a functional test that it works. Hamza, defend
Oh.
your work, please.
Yeah, no, it works 100%. I tested this thoroughly. There's nothing magical about it. Like it works. Yeah.
So we should see an IP tables rule in here
Yeah.
that's mapping.
Wait, we're not doing port mapping using IP tables on the DMS.
We are.
So
It's using IP tables.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. Wait.
So we're accepting anywhere. Is that actually a forward from anywhere on the machine to that IP?
Hamza, please explain, you know, like the IP tables command that you wrote. It's actually 2 commands, I believe.
So I don't remember very well, but we accept incoming traffic from that port we want to expose, and we route it to the private port. And we add some masquerade rules. I'm not honestly an IP tables expert, so I just did that exercise and it works, and I moved on. To be honest,
So
I'm not sure what
I
you
will-
should be able to see here. Like,
I will. I will test it after this. I'll spin up a web server and test it. I think.
Yeah,
there's
please
actually
test it. And we should, yeah, well, one thing, we should have a functional test for this because it's damn important.
And
Yeah.
also, I mean, these are kind of development things that have to be somehow documented. Apparently, it's not enough to have it working because, yeah, I mean, people forget, and also other people are picking up, and it doesn't seem to be obvious.
It needs to be intuitive when you're configuring something like this. How it's described in the ensemble needs to be intuitive to a degree, right? Like,
well, public and private, it's reasonably intuitive, right?
Yeah, indeed. So I will test that and figure that out, and then post.
One question: have we fixed the static port assignment? You know, like because what definitely worked in the beginning was the dynamic ports. Now, because if you don't specify, you know, like the public port, it's going to give you a dynamic port and will tell you in the manifest what port it is.
actually it brings another question, at least for me. So if I understand correctly, the IP tables are set up in a way that actually, if I run certain container, anybody who hits it will be able to access it. I mean, from public, because this is an IP table rule.
Yeah, but only on the
Is
public
it what
port.
we want?
Yes,
Yeah, but
the
is it
public
what we
port
want?
to go. Yes, what exactly what we want? The public port to the private port.
Yeah, well, do we? Which means any container that runs on some kind of DMS, which is publicly accessible, can be accessed from external place. And I'm not sure that we want
Yeah,
that by default.
that's exactly the point, because internally everything is accessible. Now, Sam wants to restrict internal access, but this is an entirely different topic. But when we
Well,
put a public port mapping, it goes, like to the private port of the container. That's what it does.
Yeah, well, but that now it does in IP tables by default, even not putting anything on the configuration. And I think that's a security concern.
What do you mean? So wait, what by default we allow, you have to configure which ports, public ports you allow to be mapped. Okay, you have to put it in the config, and it picks ports like that. So if you want to allow 443, for example, you have to put it in the config of the DMS to allow to map, 443 to an internal port. By default, it only allows, dynamic ports. So basically, you put 0 for the public port, and it selects a port and gives you one of the dynamic ports.
Not sure I understood it, but why? Because this is ensemble configuration. DMS configuration, ensemble configuration, different stuff. Ensemble
yes,
defines
two things.
what
The
are running in
ensemble
allocations.
configuration, yes, the ensemble says, I want a DMS that can map this public port, which you can omit because you will get a dynamic port, to this private port. So what it happens about the privileged ports like 443 or 80, okay, they have to be configured on the DMS to allow. By default, it doesn't.
In other case, when we configure this on DMS level, all the ports that are exposed, I mean, all allocations that have these ports will be accessible publicly, no matter from which ensemble they run.
Yes, and that's entirely the point. It's a public mapping.
Okay, so I'm not, well, that's exactly what I'm asking. I'm not sure that's what we want, because in general, there will be a node where,
well, when you say public, it means allow access from the public. That's what public means.
To all the stuff that is running on that node.
Not to all the stuff, only to the port, to the specific port that you specify. So it goes, the public port goes to a private port internally in one of the allocations.
So you specify it, you specify it against a node. Currently you specify it against a node, and then you specify which allocations get which port mappings. So
yes,
you can you can be very specific about how they're all set up. I think that's
not
fine.
can be, you have to be very specific about how it's all set up.
Yeah. And I will test the IP tables thing to see how it works. I'm just surprised that when we've got, public is meant to be 8080, and I don't see in here any mention of 8080 anywhere.
Okay, so what we also have to do, do you have the config? We need, there are two things that need to happen here. One is, we discussed this with comes in the beginning, and I'm not sure whether it has been implemented. I thought it was implemented, that basically that we specify in the config what ports are available, okay? And basically there is the privileged port range and the dynamic port range. So by default,
we have this.
Yes, we have this.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just sorry to interrupt. Was just going through the implementation now. I think I see the bug. So when we're adding the IP tables rule for pre-routing, we're setting the destination as the 78 IP, and then the port is the port on the container instead of the forwarded port. So it's going nowhere basically. So for example, let's say since you're forwarding ports 80 to 8080, so to check, go to like IP tables, then pre-routing, then the table would be the NUT table.
Okay, so we have a bug. All right, we got to fix this ASAP, guys.
So it's
Get priority bug. Okay, and
so,
we need a test.
Okay, cool. So, well, it's good news that it should be working. And
I
that we just
guess, yeah, because I was surprised, you know, like by this posting that you made, because this absolutely should be working. So, guys, please let's fix the bug. High priority, like we got to fix it today, and you know, like we need a test.
Okay.
And regarding the test, I would so Sam.
Yeah.
While it may not be the case that all the functional tests are running now as they should, but nonetheless, we have to describe what we're testing, whether it's in
Yeah.
English or in Gherkin, and to put it, you know, in the functional test suite, so that we see that something is implemented, not running, or etc. and so forth.
All
But
right,
we are-
guys, this priority comes up. Please drop what you're doing today, and let's fix this bug and make a test.
Okay.
So
I think
so-
Dagim worked on this last time. Did you, Dagim?
No, not really. I think it was the DNS resolution, but I think I can find the problem here on my currently open MR.
Okay.
Just a few minutes.
All right. Thank you.
so let's just have a quick run through some of these other things, because they're actually just they're kind of high level points that are about key functionality that we need to kind of think about. Okay, so in the scenario where I want to run this on my machine right now, and I've specified a public port, and it's, let's just say that there's the 8080 got exposed on my external NIC, right? Then if that's the case, then I then also need to have some forwarding rule in my router in order to be able to actually make that publicly accessible from the internet, right? Because if I look at,
Are you not?
We
So the
go-
whole point is,
yes, so this is my
We-
IP address of my machine.
No, we
Right.
go into the assumption that you have a public IP.
yeah. This is for the
No,
public
no,
IP.
no, we
If you're
can't- we
behind the
can't-
NUT,
We
no,
can't
if
have
you're
a-
behind the NUT, if you are behind the NUT and you're willing to expose ports, yes, you need to configure your firewall. You know, we
yeah,
can't magically do that.
But this is my point, is the majority of people will not have a public IP address, and they will be behind a router. Okay.
All right,
I
then
would
we can use
say-
UPnP. Okay, well,
So hear me out. Okay. So that's like quite a lot of people will want to do that. B, we somehow need to consider how we're going to generate SSL certs and or be able to make some sort of public DNS resolution work. If we've made that port available to the outside world, it needs to be resolved from a name from the outside world to wherever that arrives.
Sam,
Okay.
Sam, I understand. You know, like part of like the original implementation is, first of all, if you're behind the NAT, you know, like what we can do, the best we can do actually, is to add some code to when it knows that it's behind the NAT to try to use UPnP and map the port.
Well, the problem with UPnP is majority, like, it was created and then it was considered a big security hole, and now most routers used to ship with it. Now no routers ship with it.
Yeah, so
But-
if there's
but
no
that's-
automated
but
way
that's-
to map the port, okay, then
that's-
you know,
that-
like the operator needs to intervene here, because if
But-
there's no magical way to map the port,
Yes. Okay.
there's
so
also
let's-
not PMP. There is a secondary protocol. You know, there's not PMP that we can use as well.
So let's consider that if we want to deploy something and make it publicly accessible from the internet, we need to somehow consider how we're going to discover that that port is actually available from the node that we're trying to deploy to, prior to actually doing all the work and deploying it, only to find that it's not publicly accessible.
This is
Yes,
also,
this,
may I add, I think we have this functionality actually. When we ask for the specific port, and I think in somewhere we have a map that we keep which one we have allocated. So it wouldn't even go to the bit stage, if I remember correctly. I don't know if we changed this functionality, but it wouldn't respond to a request.
yeah. The Mobin is right. This is how it's supposed to work. Now, you know, for your question, Sam, you know, the assumption is that if you're putting in the configuration that you have public ports, the assumption is that you are publicly reachable from the internet. Now you're talking about a slightly different use case where you have a machine that is behind a firewall and wants to expose public ports. Now we have a problem. If there is no automated way to map these ports, for example, with UPnP, then sorry, you just shouldn't put in your config that you have publicly accessible ports. That's all there is to it.
Maybe.
No,
But
Well,
no.
I
if
think
you ask them-
that's the way to go about it. We should not kind of do the network configuration for the users.
So when people onboard their machine and when they modify the config of DMS, we should then just check that
Well, but yes, we have to have a routine which checks whether it's correct. That's another question. But let's see how to write a certain routine that if let's say it is said that certain DMS is accessible publicly and it's put in the configuration while it's not correct, then we shouldn't accept it. But basically, we should not play with this. I mean, kind of giving public access to your DMS should be service providers' responsibility, not ours.
Yeah, and for the use case that you're going behind firewalls and residential machines, then the best we can do is use UPnP or not PnP. There's no other way around it. Otherwise, the user has to go to the router and open the ports.
Actually, there is, and I think it is the whole point that Sam was trying to bring here, and it is to have some kind of entity acting as the proxy. And I think the entity should simply be the orchestrator. So the orchestrator.
No. It's not the job of the orchestrator to act as front end for the entire ensemble. Not at all.
Although that's I agree that maybe what we should do is if whatever ports are specified as open in the DMS config should be open, and we should test that and then effectively no. But this last piece is kind of related to what Joel was talking about, but it's not doesn't put the role on the orchestrator. It puts the role to a dedicated role for certain DMSs that are on the network to support proxying and networking, like a helper node that has got good internet bandwidth, has got public IP addresses that are available. It's got ports that are open, that when you create a subnet, you can join that node to the subnet and it can act as the proxy for services that are running on that subnet.
Okay. So let me put it this way. We can do this already, by having public nodes. So one is what Kabir said. We need to check indeed that the ports that we declare in the config as reachable are indeed reachable from the internet. But you can simply put a node there, and you do the port mapping in that node. Now, what we need is logic internally to forward from that node to the rest of the ensemble.
Well, yes, and when you think about proxying, there's two roles. There's two things that the proxy does, right? One is it's basically following rules that says if something comes in on this port, then I need to send it to that port. However, and that works with IP tables if you've got a very basic scenario where you've got one website and you've got port 443 and you want that to go from the proxy to another web server, right? But if you're in a scenario where you've got 10 websites, but you've only got one IP address and one 443 open, you need to be able to actually proxy it properly and look at the host headers that are coming in and proxy it properly. And in order to do that, you need to have a proxy configuration that's got the right DNS names in it, that's linked to with all of the targets that DNS name needs to do. And that needs a dedicated proxy to be able to do that.
Again, we're not in the business of providing dedicating proxies and proxying bandwidth for anyone. That's just the wrong way to go at it. The right way to go at it is to basically find the provider that has the open ports that you need, okay, and run the proxy there. Now, in principle, there's nothing forbidding us from doing that. So all you have to do is have, like the public node in your ensemble, And then you need to set up the proxy yourself right now. Now, what you're asking is whether we can provide a service that basically sets up the proxy for the user. Because, like on the one hand, you have the public accessibility, which is already given, like if it's a public node, and everything is writable internally on the subnet. So it's a matter of actually putting your hub proxy in there, listening and doing the multiplexing. So there's nothing stopping us from doing that already. Yes, it's not easy. It's not trivial, but it's not hard either.
Well, but it's the user would have to do a lot of work in terms
Yes,
of
right now
Yes,
the
and
user
they
has to
should.
do
DNS.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Whereas,
now,
whereas
what
an
you're describing here is, like us writing some solution software that basically sets up the hub proxy or Nginx or whatever, okay, this public port to do the multiplexing and send it to the right nodes in the ensemble. So what we have
Yes.
already planned, okay, is that we have plans for a load balancer and, like auto scaling. So this should be part of these work packets.
Okay.
It's not only technical. I think we kind of reach this place is that as a platform, we should not do this automatic stuff on the protocol level, but it can be done by users who are technical enough in order to allow public access to DNS that are running on the machines. But that is kind of that's a different question. We should not inbuild this into platform itself because that's
So
a security issue.
you could imagine the role of a proxy provider that is delegated access to the ensemble in order to be able to proxy to
Well,
the
let's
subnet.
what
No,
we have in
it's not
this.
even that. Like the proxy provider is part of the ensemble. It's the public front end of the ensemble, right? And it's not that exotic. It's not that it needs that much, like know-how. It's like it's pretty standard practice. Like pretty much every cloud deployment in the world, it has, like some load balancer or a hub proxy, sitting in front and sending, to the web server instances in the VPC.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so
But-
it's not rocket science. It's a well understood thing. But right now the user has to do it. Maybe we can provide some solution software that basically does it, and we have like a ready-made solution, and we'll say, okay, here deploy these to this public node that's the front end of the website, and put like the load balancer in there. So we're going to do something like this.
In
as
principle,
a service.
we can, but if and when and if the big if we do it, we have to put a bunch of disclaimers for a user to understand what they're doing. Like, okay, if you run this script, you will expose your node publicly.
Yeah,
And
we
that
don't
is a
even.
choice of the user.
Yeah, we don't even need the script. Basically, what you can do is that you can have a container that basically has the code for hub proxy or Nginx, and then you simply configure like the internal rules for what to send it inside the ensemble. So Sam, do you understand what I'm saying here? So basically, like the ensemble.
I mean, in the config that I'm just using Caddy to do exactly that.
Yeah. So basically, we're not in the business of fronting bandwidth for anyone. We should never go into that business because it's fucking expensive and it gives us nothing.
I'm not saying that we do it, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Much
So
like
basically,
there's a role for storage people that are going to need to have.
The way to do it is, like to have a public node of the ensemble, which has to be a high bandwidth node. We should probably have, like some parameters, we should add constraints about the total bandwidth available to the node. We don't have that, but it's already something we've been discussing. Like having a bandwidth measurement when the node comes up to know what's like a uplink and downlink capacity.
Yeah, but that my point is that the reason why I specify or suggested this concept of a network provider role is there aren't that many of those around. Right?
Yes, you have to find,
so,
and probably these nodes are going to be more expensive. Like if someone is offering this kind of functionality on his DMS,
exactly.
he would be right to charge.
And somehow they need to be, if somehow when you're putting together the cost of what it costs to run an ensemble, and it needs to use some sort of proxy or whatever data storage that's high performance or whatever, there's a cost above the CPU and RAM usage on the machine.
Of course, the bandwidth is not free. If you want to set up a website that has like 1 million requests per second, you need to have like bandwidth for that, and this bandwidth is not free. It costs.
Indeed. and not only does it cost, like, not only should it cost and it be specified and worked out in how we do this, because at the moment costs are fairly fixed, but bandwidth is not fixed, or not so much bandwidth, but throughput is not fixed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, as part of our contract accounting, we also need to consider the bandwidth costs and how we're going to measure this.
One thing is a contract, which is, I think, less complex one, well, from my perspective. But then another thing is how to measure the actual bandwidth that is going through certain. Let's say, how do I provision that? Okay, I have this bandwidth on the hardware level, so there is certain ensemble, and then I give this ensemble this bandwidth, let's say, and I price it under the contract, or maybe I also am able to measure what is used.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
Bandwidth.
It's not difficult. There are standard tools to do. And what we can also do is that you can do traffic saping. This is how it's called, that basically you only allow a certain, like bandwidth, like in and out.
Yeah. Which
All
is
right,
which
so
is
this
what
is
I'm
what we have to
using on
build
the test. This is what I'm using on the test harness to control the bandwidth for the bandwidth tests. That same kind of functionality could be applied to the adapter that the
Do you do this on the tunnel level, or you can like slice tunnel to the different subtunnels?
I'll do it on the tunnel level, but you can do it on any adapter, but it kind of makes sense to do it on the tunnel level.
So which means you will build different tunnels for each ensemble or allocation?
Yeah, which is what we're doing anyway.
So does it? How much does it cost? Does it give a lot of what's that called?
No, it has very low overhead. It happens in kernel, very low overhead.
Okay, so that then we have to build in this into accounting system somehow.
Yeah, but basically when you configure your Linux kernel, there's an option say traffic saping. Well, it's been a while since I configured my kernel, but back in the day, it's been there for 20 years, right? You can set up traffic saping.
Which means we need to. What does that mean? We have to for nodes that will enable this, we'll have to require like
pretty much all the
modification?
nodes. All the pre-built kernels you get from Ubuntu, Fedora, and all that, you're gonna have it enabled.
Yeah. But what we might want to think about is somewhere in our constraints, specify some bandwidth constraints. We've got
absolutely. Upstream and downstream capacity.
We've just got a simple bandwidth. And
We
this
do
is for between nodes, but maybe we just want to apply this on the adapter or something like that.
Yes. Sam, I agree with you. We discussed this quite a bit with Kabir and Agim to basically have the ability to specify or measure the bandwidth of the node itself. So not to a specific node, but to the public.
So my question would be, Sam, you were showing what ensemble configuration in that file?
Yes.
So in terms of ensemble configuration, I would say I don't care about the bandwidth between nodes, because this ensemble configuration shows what is the required bandwidth between allocations.
Yes, we should have, like a node-specific bandwidth requirement that basically sets the required bandwidth for the node to the public. So this is particularly useful for public nodes.
So on the node level, nodes will say, this is my bandwidth to the public. However, on ensemble level, I will say, I'm running on, not ensemble, on ensemble level, I will say, I'm running this allocation, which needs this bandwidth to that allocation. And then the whole framework should map which nodes actually
we already
this
have
constraint.
that. Yeah, we already have the constraint for bandwidth between allocations. I think the code is not implemented for actually measuring it, and we should. But it's already there. The check-out constraints. What we need is something different, which is basically the bandwidth of the node itself to the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it should not be in the ensemble configuration.
It should be in the ensemble configuration as a constraint. And, like that, we need a node that has that much bandwidth to the internet.
All right. So this is not between these nodes, it's to the internet.
Yes, it's between, not to a specific node in the ensemble, but, to the general public.
Yeah, and you're also in a scenario when you've got multiple allocations running on one node that you will want to put the traffic shaping rules in there to ensure fairness, right? So you can be burstable and you can burst up to the full bandwidth that's available, but if one node starts hogging it all and another node needs it, then your traffic shaping should be handling that, right?
Yeah, but for example, there is a use case. I have a ensemble where there is an allocation, two allocations, which require basically very like wide bandwidth between themselves. So the logical way to resolve it is to put them on the single node, but it's a logic of resolving it. You don't need to write it anywhere. Because
Well,
internally,
right now you have to, because you have to specify explicitly the node where the allocations go in which logical node. Then it's up to you. But when we start doing the large ensembles and basically we have the declaration and we generate the internal ensemble config based on the declarations of the users, then yes, there should be logic that actually does that.
Okay, cool.
Sam, can you write up an issue? Like basically we have the load balancing and auto scaling work packages already. They're not scheduled for 0.6. They're for later. But I think this this is part of this. Like because we want to provide like load balancing support, right? Well,
yeah,
obviously, that's exactly the use case you were talking about. Like a load balancing. What does it mean? You put a reverse proxy, like on the public facing node, and then this internally routes to the various allocation containers that are like are there, and then we need the ability to scale up and down based on the bandwidth on the traffic.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah,
Also, we also need to consider like having multiple proxy nodes, and then basically you can do DNS round robin like between them. Now, which brings us to the other issue brought up, like the DNS. Yes, we know about this issue. Like right now, the understanding is that you set up the ensemble, and like it's up to the user, to use their infrastructure to set up DNS. We don't provide DNS, but maybe as a solution, we should provide DNS.
We need to do some sort of dynamic DNS, right? Like because when the allocation's created and we know what the IP is, we need to somehow update something externally.
Yes, but this is right now it's left up to the user to use their scripts to set up their DNS providers. But but I hear you that we should try to automate it more. And what we can do is that perhaps we can provide a DNS service. And this DNS, like maps, the thing, and then you can set up your round robin, like between, like your ensemble front end nodes, like to handle the traffic and so on.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Certainly, initially, we can just write some scripts that interact with public dynamic DNS services.
Yeah. The expectation is that the user is gonna, like who's spawning the ensemble, he has a script that picks up, like the public IP and puts it in their DNS. It's okay for now, but but this again, like it's not entirely part of the platform. It's more like a solution, like providing DNS as a service.
Yeah, sure, indeed. Okay.
All right, Sam,
I'm gonna
send you. I'm gonna send you into the load balancing auto scaling work packages. Please go wild, write up your thoughts there, so we have them all collected. And when it's time to start working on this to implement it, we consider all those. And like I think like it would be a valuable solution offering to basically provide DNS.
Yeah. Okay.
And once you have DNS, then you can do SSL certificates, right? Because without DNS, SSL certificates in the PKI are meaningless.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that I think it's not just useful, it's also quite needed because that relates to integration with at least a SNET platform. If you remember some of the community, like what we talked with Albina in Bangkok.
Yeah, I mean DNS is fairly fundamental, and yeah, DNS and and tying that to being able to create the SSL is just a fundamental part of making it all work.
All right. Sam,
just-
go wild. Take over, like temporary ownership of load balancing and scaling. Put your thoughts there, like open an issue about the DNS service, all that, so that when it can, it's not that far away, like maybe in like 2-3 months, we're going to start working on
Yeah.
it so that basically we get it, we have everything collected, and we
Sure.
don't have to think about it from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there'll be many use cases that I'm doing before that's going to have to use this kind of functionality that I'll be doing with, whatever solutions I can put together.
Please
And
document the solutions because maybe we can reuse them when you
yeah,
get the
they'll
actual service
be in,
implementation.
like, my idea is to kind of have this like NuNet solutions accelerators, and effective which is a bunch of best practice for certain things, and we just keep them all in the repo with a bunch of scripts that are really useful that people can use.
Yeah, precisely. And then when the time comes and we implement a service as NuNet to provide DNS for like the various ensembles, then we can reuse the like all the stuff that you work out.
I think we'll get community involvement in those scripts, and then actually I think that will probably gain some traction, and people will just build services off it or whatever. I think if we don't do it, someone else will. So
And that would be a very happy outcome as well.
Exactly, that's exactly it. Yeah. So just quickly, we've got 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to quickly touch on volumes and file mapping into containers, because this is also something else that I'm trying to do, and it doesn't appear to be currently supported. The only way we can get data into a container or accessible by a container is from a script that will copy the data into the container. Which is great
Or
if
wait, no, that's not the only way. We have support for provisioning script, so you can put something in your provisioning script that basically mounts things for you. Okay, the reason it's not supported only for the volumes because it would be half baked. We don't know what we want to support, and we have Mobin working on storage. So you also need to talk to Mobin about this.
But if I've so at the moment, let's just take the example of a config file that we want to deploy for a Nginx example, right? Nginx container with a config file, right, where we can't specify everything as environment variables.
Yeah, you can put things in the provisioning script. So there is room in the ensemble config for provisioning scripts that are going to run when the allocation is provisioned. And these provisioning scripts can do anything. They can mount volumes externally. Now there is the issue of the credentials in there, okay, which is, but like in principle, there's nothing stopping you from mounting a volume, like from your own, like data set or from S3, for example.
I thought the scripts run inside the container.
Yes, but there is the provisioning script. The provisioning script is run once when the allocation is provisioned. You can have multiple provisioning scripts.
So like I think I stripped it out of this. But yeah, so we've got like a provision script here, right? And when you run this is run inside the container.
Yes, and it can mount things for you.
Okay, I didn't realize that it could mount an external.
It can do anything it wants.
Okay.
Sorry, let's clarify this. It cannot mount a volume if you want to be specific. It cannot mount a volume on the host to the current running container. If this is
yes, it can mount a remote volume though, or it can
a
mount
remote,
like S3.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So if you want, from what I understand, if you want to, let's say, mount something, a volume that is on the host, we don't have that now, Sam, if this is what you are referring to. However, what you can do at this point of time with the script, you can fetch whatever data, as Visual says, from any host, from any remote server, or whatever you want.
Yeah, and there's nothing stopping you from mounting your, like your S3 bucket, like as a volume in the container.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the volumes that do not work. And this is what I remember.
No. Basically, the volumes that we mount do not work.
Exactly.
I removed this by hand. I explicitly went and removed this because it would be half baked. But the script can mount a remote volume locally in the container.
Okay. So if, for example, in this scenario, right, where this is another Orchid server that needs to have the it's a wallet private key inside the container, and I know there's a bunch of stuff that makes that not advisable. However, if
we have a solution for this. Wait, you can run your own node in your trusted hardware, and you bring that peer with an explicit assignment of the peer. So you know that your wallet is in your hardware, but it's totally inadvisable to put it, like in some random dude, like computer.
Yeah, indeed. So like and that is what I'm doing here, right? This ensemble is being deployed to itself, right? So I have control over this node, right? And then the idea for the pose mesh kind of use case is that rather than people using a compose file, they'll just run a NUNET ensemble, and then they will also delegate the capabilities to deploy on their DMS instance to Orchid, and then Orchid effectively have a kind of an elastic cloud at the edge that they can use to deploy other stuff, right? But the core node stuff is all kind of stays on the local server of the node runner and is managed by them.
Precisely. The private key material should never leak into the ensemble. I mean, maybe you don't care and you're fine with that, but by default, it should never leak. Okay, and that's exactly why we put, like the explicit peer assignment in there, so you can bring your own nodes that hold the sensitive material.
Okay, so I'm going to have a go at trying to get some other data into the container. That like in some of the examples that Dagim gave me, it kind of works if you're using an Ubuntu container or something, but if you're using quite a specific container, sometimes you just don't have the rights to do anything inside it.
Okay, let's see what the cat says about this.
Right. My cat had something to say about that as well. Did you hear it? But anyway, we are 1 minute over, so I would just like to thank everyone for listening.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam, for bringing those topics up. Uncovered the bug, and we discussed a lot of very important issues about how to run websites, like on NuNet.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you all. See you in the daily.
All right.
See you.
Well, bye-bye.
See you.
Bye.